Adding a keyline to a photograph in Lightroom is a little bit more complicated than it is in Photoshop. Now there's a number of ways that we can do this. One way, of course, is to simply export the JPEG and pass it over to Photoshop so you can add the keyline in there. Or you could use the print module and start playing around with strokes and using the image settings and the layout to change the size of the image and what have you before you send it off to a JPEG by printing it to a JPEG effectively. Of course, the problem with that is that you're limited as to how you can size the image when you're exporting. So the easiest way to do this, I think, uses a couple of third-party tools. The first tool that we need is something called LR Now I'll put a note for the address for this in the description for this video. But you download LR This is donationware, so you can pay as much as you like or as little as you like, but you do have to pay something, otherwise the functionality does get restricted. I think I paid £10 for it, so it's really not hugely expensive. It's a one-off payment currently. Of course that could change, but it is a one-off payment. So you can download LR and then you can just follow the installation instructions. Now LR also needs another tool. It needs this tool called ImageMagick 7. ImageMagick 7 is completely free. There is no charge required for it. It's in the it's released under basically a freeware license. To get it, click on the install ImageMagick 7 button, and the version that you want is this one here. And just click on the download link and it will download to your computer. Obviously this is Windows. If you're using Mac, you would get the Mac version. I'm just going to quickly run through the installation procedure for this because there's a vital step that you need to do when you're installing it. So let's just click on here. So the first thing you have is the license agreement. Read the license agreement like you always do. I'm just going to accept that. This gives you a little bit of more information about ImageMagick. Then the important thing that you need to have checked is this one here, install legacy utilities. You need to have that checked, otherwise the export procedure won't work properly. Now I've already got it installed, so I'm just going to cancel that. And let's go back to Lightroom. So now what I want to do is export the image. I can either go down to export and export, choose export up there, or we can just choose export from the file menu. I'll do that one. The first thing I want to do is specify a folder for this. My images always go into a folder called PDI. Not going to add this to the catalogue. Don't need it in the catalogue. I don't need to store the JPEGs. Next thing I need to do is set up file naming. I have set up a template for this. To do that, I'm just going to click on edit, and then we've got it in here for metadata. I can choose title and insert that, and it inserts this into this dialog. Then I've hard coded space by space, and then I've got the creator set up, which is something which I populate when I import images into Lightroom. But you could of course just hard code your name, and you can see above that it's given me the example of Ashridge Clouds 1 by John Dobson, which of course excuse me, which of course meets the naming convention for a PDI. So we set up the location. This is where my images will go to. We've set up the file name, and then the next thing I'm going to do is set my file settings to JPEG, 100% quality, and in the sRGB color space. Image sizing, I'm going to set my long edge to 2000 pixels and set my resolution to 100 pixels per inch. Make sure that's checked, and make sure that don't enlarge is not checked. And this will export my JPEG, and the longest side, whether that's vertical or horizontal, will be 2000 pixels. Some people don't do export output sharpening. I do, so I'll sharpen it for screen with a standard amount of sharpening. Now the next thing I need to do in here, if we go down, we've got stuff to do with metadata, watermarking, which obviously we don't do in post-processing, but we've got nothing in here to tell us how to put a keyline into this. But when you install Lightroom, you get this box down here called post-process actions. And what I want to do is I want to add some inner borders. If I add it as outer borders, then it makes the image larger than 2000 pixels along the longest edge. So I'm just going to click on inner borders and then click on insert. And what that does, that automatically includes this LR Mogrify configuration box and the inner borders option. In here, we need to navigate to the path of the ImageMagick application, and the command that we want in there is one called Mogrify. So I'm just going to click on Choose, and then we go down to where this would be installed, which is ImageMagick, and then I just want Mogrify. That sets that up. That's fine, that's all I need for that. You don't need to add anything else in there. That's all you need, all you want. And then we come to the inner border options. Now, in here, I'm just going to make sure that identical borders is checked. And then all we do is we set up in here the size of the border that we want. And then the final thing we need to do is click on this box here, and this allows us to set the color. So we could do a really pretty green color here. And then when I click on export, what that does is, set the opacity to 100%, of course. Click on export, and this will export the image. It passes it over to Mogrify, which is part of ImageMagick. And then it exports the image there with the pale green border. One thing I forgot to mention, which you might find useful, is in post-processing, after export, show in Explorer or Finder if you're using the Mac. And then of course all you need to do is add that as a preset. And then you just simply click on the image, and then you can just choose your preset PDI. In my case, it's PDI with border. And that's how you add a keyline using Lightroom.